Welcome everybody to our webinar today about the sustainability tools SDG Compass, about aligning the business goals with the SDGs. I'll just give it one more minute and then we'll get started. We have a lot of interest in this webinar, so that is really great. All right, let's get started. Helle Bang-Jorgensen from Global Compact Network Canada here. Welcome to all of you on this webinar today. We have a lot of interest. I know that people probably will join us in the next minute or so, but I think I should get started because we have a lot of great insight to share with you today. So first of all, I need to tell you that if I can figure out to shift this slide, there we go, how to use the control panel. You are all muted by us. That will be by Aparna, and you will have a chat box so you can write your questions there. You can write them whenever you want. You can either share only with us and you can share with all, I believe. We will then, read the questions at the Q&A session. Then let's get to the agenda for today. So I will start with a short introduction about the SDGs, but more importantly about the survey, the SDG survey that we are conducting at the moment, and we are the Global Compact Network Canada. Then I'm very proud to say that we have World Business Council for Sustainable Development, the Global Reporting Initiative, so GRI, as well as UN Global Compact that have worked together on the toolkit that we are to present today, called the SDG Compass. And I'm proud to have Emily Grady from World Business Council for Sustainable Development North America with us today to present this part. Then we will hear from Tanya Carnegie about how KPMG are working on the SDGs, both I would say as a global service provider, but also as a company. And this to me is the beauty of the SDGs. It's about aligning the business strategy to the Sustainable Development Goals and see the opportunities. Last but not least, Jeff Peck from TELUS will share a bit insight from the SDGs journey, if I can call it that TELUS is on. Then Q&A and just a single slide or two, I think, about our upcoming events. We are at the end of the year. So, and then we'll have a lot of events for 2016, but I think we'll just talk about the ones for December. Let me get started. So in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals, you're all aware from our previous webinars and newsletters, etc., that this past September, 193 member states of the UN came together in New York to adopt the Sustainable Development Goals. The 17 final goals cover a 15-year time frame to 2030 and focus on extreme poverty, fighting equality, injustice, protecting our planet, etc. I have another slide where you can see all the goals. Let me just show you that now. The SDGs have been, as you also know, negotiated by the United Nations with widespread public input, including significant involvement by companies participating in the UN Global Compact, and businesses around the world are embracing these new SDGs by integrating them into the business strategies, the operations, the reporting, etc. So it's important for me to say that the 10 principles, the UN Global Compact 10 principles, are kind of like the foundation or the starting point for advancing the SDGs. And with the SDGs, we create a win-win situation, providing, I would say, both the private but also the public sector with lots of opportunities for investment, engagement, and growth. So you can see that the big role of the private sector for achieving these goals have been clearly recognized. But we all know that to have an impact, especially in today, business must identify and prioritize the goals to focus on. And this is why in our webinar today, we will talk about how business can align their plans and goals with the Sustainable Development Goals, supported by the examples of today with KPMG and TELUS. Then, as you see on the slide where I show you these 17 goals, the results of the SDG survey. That's not really fair because I'm not going to share the result, but I will tell you that we, being the Global Compact Network Canada, sent out a survey, and many of you have already responded, thank you so much, where we are asking in terms of the 17 SDGs that are strategic interests to the organization, and also to see how we can help Canadian businesses and organizations achieve these strategic goals. So far, a third of our participants have answered to the SDG survey from various sectors and industries, and I can say in short, the results are very much a representative of the Canadian market. So in case you are still interested in voicing your opinion or have not done so yet, the service is still open, and we actually been asked to open it up to non-Global Compact Network Canada participant. So even though if you're not yet a Global Compact Network Canada participant, feel free to actually answer the survey. You can see the link in the chat section. I believe it's put into the chat section. It will take you 10 minutes of your time. You can do it while I'm speaking. Don't do it when all the other speakers do speak. So I will say that we will share the details of our findings with the network, and those are answered in an interactive call in mid-December, where we also will have representatives from the government participating. So let me just tell you very quickly in terms of the questions you'll see in the survey. We have asked basically 4 or 5 questions. One question is in terms of the issues that you, as that answer the questionnaire, believe is important within Canada, the issues that's most important in the world that Canadian organizations should focus on collectively, and also then looking at the company working in and seeing what are the existing initiatives in that organizations that's already happening that can be linked to the SDGs, and finally, what are those that the business could do. So the results so far have showed that Canadian companies are ranking a few of our top 5, 6 of the SDGs as prioritized. And combining the different categories, I would say those that goes to the top is decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, quality education, good health and well-being, and climate action, or protecting our planet. So while in most areas the answers showed mainly many similarities, the second question, issues in the world, actually differed. Issues such as zero hunger and no poverty were mainly seen as priorities to focus on in the world and not within Canada. And perhaps it's just the last thing in this time where we're all talking about Paris and COP21. I can share that climate action, so Sustainable Development Goal 13, protecting the planet, was ranked in the top 5 in the first 3 questions. However, even though we all have it top of mind, when answering in terms of the actions that's actually already happening within companies, it scored very low. So not that many existing initiatives. So you can say that although companies see climate change as an important issue, there seem to be very few existing initiatives. Then let's just jump to the next in terms of the results of our SDG survey, and the areas that you, as who have answered the survey, said that we could help with. So all companies who participated in the survey indicated their interest in guidance from the Global Compact Network Canada in form of working groups, webinars, and assisting in different ways on how to align the business plans with the SDGs and how to integrate the SDGs into business models, etc. So in short, that means that in the new year we will be hosting information sessions on the different frameworks. We will be facilitating various sessions and discussions to help build the knowledge of the SDGs in Canada. We will help align the goals with your business strategy, help to understand how to set goals, achieve them, report on them, etc. And well, I guess we already started conducting a series of informational webinars, the SDG overview webinar that we had in September, and now this about the SDG Compass, and many more to come. Here you will see the SDG industry matrix. I'll not steal the thunder from Tanya, because we will be co-hosting sessions with KPMG in terms of the SDG matrix project. So Tanya will be sharing with you more information about the SDG matrices later on in this webinar. A lot of good information here. I will say that we have within the Global Compact a lot of issue engagement platforms. So to support you to fully leverage the Sustainable Development Goals, we will of course draw upon all of these global issue engagement platforms, such as Caring for Climate, Anti-Corruption Call to Action, Supply Chain Sustainability, Women Empowerment Principles, Human Rights, etc., etc. There's so much good information. But more practically, we want to look at what it is that companies can act upon and thereby improve their performance more efficiently and effectively. So we'll do a call to action on all these different platforms, and we will formalize partnerships and will help companies operationalize the practical implementation of the framework, setting the goals, etc. And I think there's a lot more to come in that regard. So why don't I, just looking at the clock here, not wanting to take more time, say that we clearly would love for those of you who have not yet answered the survey to do that. You have the link here. As I said, we have been asked actually to also have other companies and stakeholders that's not part of the Global Compact Network Canada answering the survey. So we have produced a few Twitter texts, and if you're on Twitter, feel free to share these, and so we can actually get even more input in terms of the SDGs. So again, thanks to all of you who have already participated, and thanks participate in the survey, and thanks in advance to all of you who will do so. I think that's enough for me. So now let me just very quickly say that I'm so pleased again to have Emily Grady here from World Business Council for Sustainable Development North America. And Emily, you working with also the SDG Compass together with the other organizations, so GRI and UN Global Compact, and will just tell us a little bit about the SDG. Over to you, Emily. And I should say to everybody, I'm not going to read the bios because I know you already have all the bios. So that was a good suggestion that I got earlier from another webinar. So with that, Emily, welcome. Over to you.
Hi, Hella. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody. I am from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, based in the New York City office. And I've worked with a couple of my colleagues, along with the UN Global Compact and GRI, to help develop the SDG Compass. And so I will share that today. with everybody on the call. I don't know if we can advance to the first slide, please. There we go. Just to begin, we can go to the next one, there we go. I'll give you a little background on WBCSD. We are a global organization with 200 member companies, and we work to help our members improve their social and environmental performance. And one of the ways we do this is by developing tools like the SDG Compass in partnership with other great organizations to help the measurement process and the standardization process so that the kinds of benefits that we're looking to generate can accrue with some clarity. Next slide, please. So you've heard a little bit already about the SDG Compass. This is a guide to help companies align their sustainability strategies as well as measure and manage their contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. Like I said, it was developed in collaboration with the three organizations on this slide, and it was developed through a multi-stakeholder feedback process. Groups, companies associated with each of the partners went through various iterations of the guide and provided feedback along the way so that the current version, which is available at sdgcompass.org, you'll see that a few times, is kind of reflective of the feedback of all of the companies. It was launched on September 26th at the UN Private Sector Forum, and so it's really now just beginning to be used by companies in their strategy development process. I should say it's also free and open to the public, so we encourage anybody to check it out if you're interested. Next slide. All right, so we've already heard a little bit about the Sustainable Development Goals, and the only thing I'll add is that they were developed through a multi-stakeholder process, and business has an essential role to play in achieving them. Next slide. You can see here the Secretary General of the United Nations also has emphasized the role of business in terms of applying creativity and innovation to addressing the global sustainable development challenges. Next slide. And there's also a clear business case for starting to align, for companies to align their internal strategies with the SDGs. You can see several of the business cases or business opportunities, and I think a very exciting area of focus is moving into new markets. So companies can develop new technologies that would increase energy efficiency, renewable energy, or sustainable transportation in new markets that don't already have access to these beneficial technologies. There's also the opportunity to substitute traditionally manufactured products and processes with more technologically efficient solutions that could reduce emissions and waste. There's also the need to meet, there's also the opportunity to meet the needs of large and untapped markets in sectors like healthcare and education, energy, finance, and technology that can improve the lives of the 4 billion people who live in poverty now. So these are just a couple examples, but there is a huge opportunity for companies to think about the SDGs as a real business opportunity. Next slide, please. And we found in talking to companies that although many companies are aware of the Sustainable Development Goals, they don't feel that they have the tools they need to kind of to integrate them into their strategies. And so this is really the purpose of the Sustainable Development Goal Compass. And I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking through each of the steps that are available in the guide. Next slide, please. So as you saw on Hela's slide previously, this is sort of our logo for the SDG Compass. The resource itself is comprised of several tools. One is the guide itself, which explains each of the 5 steps. We also have put together a live inventory of existing business indicators from sources that most of you would be familiar with, and these are mapped against the 17 SDGs and the 169 targets. We also have an inventory of business tools mapped against the SDGs, and under development, soon to be published, is a 2-page overview of each SDG that covers the role of business with examples of solutions and indicators and tools. So these are all available on. Next slide. So I'm not going to spend too much time here, but the very first part of the guide is helping companies understand the SDGs. We recognize that even if the sustainability team in a company knows them, doesn't mean that everybody else in a company will be familiar with what they are, how they work, and what the opportunities are associated with them. So the first part of the guide is really just about establishing kind of a baseline understanding and clarifying how companies can engage with the Sustainable Development Goals, mostly in the areas that we just talked about in terms of the business case to do so. Okay. The more substantive step, the second step is we call it defining priorities. And with 17 goals and 169 targets, there's no way a company can meaningfully interact with all of the goals and establish targets and objectives associated with every single one of the goals and the targets. So instead, we recommend that companies look at their entire value chain and sort of scan their value chain in relation to each of the SDGs and figure out which of the SDGs are most relevant. We recommend looking to increase the positive impacts that companies are already making and to minimize the negative impacts. And this doesn't always happen, within the factory boundaries that you might expect. Companies have a lot of sway, especially large companies across the entire value chain, and there might be areas to improve some of the SDGs that are outside the bounds of the company's kind of operations, but along the value chain in an important and impactful area. So this first step involves assessing the value chain, maximizing positive impacts and minimizing negative impacts. The next step within this defining priorities section is to select indicators. So on sdgcompass.org, we have an inventory of business indicators mapped against the 17 SDGs and their targets. The inventory contains indicators from widely recognized sources, including GRI, SASB, and CDP, as well as others. And so we encourage then companies to select the most relevant indicators for each potential high impact area, or use the list that we've developed to establish some of their own indicators. So then lastly, based on the assessment of the value chain and the selection of indicators, we recommend that companies define their priorities in areas that they can measure and monitor, and where they will have the biggest impact along their value chain. Next slide, please. The goal setting phase of the Compass is critical to business success and really integrating the Sustainable Development Goals into the company. So by aligning the company's goals with the SDGs, corporate leadership can demonstrate their commitment to sustainable development. So the first aspect of the goal setting step is really building off of the previous step of defining the priorities. It's about establishing specific goals that the company can commit to based on the priorities established in step 2. And this helps ensure that the company's goals include opportunities to make positive contributions to the SDGs, as well as minimize the negative impacts they have towards the SDGs. So we recommend selecting specific key performance indicators. This is essential to setting the goals, and this can be used as the basis for driving, monitoring, and communicating progress. And the guide recommends that companies select KPIs that directly address the impact or the outcomes of its activities, because it's easier to measure and monitor. The next phase here is establishing the baseline goal and the type of the goal. So some goals are better expressed over a period of time and others at a point in time. Some are also expressed in absolute terms, and others make sense to be relative. So each goal we recommend determining, what makes sense for that goal and for the company based on those different types of goal baselines. Similarly, the level of ambition really matters. By setting a high bar, it's more likely that the goal will spur innovation internally in the company and incentivize creativity, making the impact of the goal even more substantial. And then finally, announcing the commitment publicly, announcing the goals publicly is really key to making sure that there's transparency and accountability, and in terms of the company meeting the goals, but then also in terms of inspiring others to take similar action. Next slide. So the fourth step is focused on integrating, and this is really just making sure that the goals don't stay in the hands of only a few people at a company. It's important for there to be active CEO leadership and leadership of senior managers. This is really important when there's any kind of major organizational change and lofty goals like this into the company. It's also important that while the sustainability teams are key to advancing the goals, they can't be the only people on the ground working towards the goals. And so we recommend helping companies integrating their goals across various functions in the company, so that HR and the engineers on the ground and others have aspects of the Sustainable Development Goals integrated into their annual performance review, for example. And finally, central to the goals, actually Goal 17 is focused on collaboration and partnership, and we recognize that this process is very much a collaborative process, and there's opportunity for collaboration across the value chain, for sector-based partnerships, as well as for multi-stakeholder partnerships, such as public-private partnerships, to help advance and embed the goals in an organization and beyond. Next slide. And now the last step of the Compass is about reporting and communicating. So the SDGs enable companies to report information on sustainable development performance using common indicators and a shared set of priorities. It's really a tremendous opportunity that the world has come together around these specific areas. And so as best as we can do to communicate along those same lines, it'll be easier and more exciting, really, to aggregate up and look at kind of the impact across the board at what kinds of positive sustainable development contributions companies can make. And then stakeholders, companies can demonstrate their sustainable development. And again, this helps promote the cycle going forward. Next slide. So this is just sort of the wrap-up. You can see sdgcompass.org is where you'll find more information about this tool. And of course, on the next slide, you will see my contact information. You're welcome to reach out to me. We can move to the next slide with any questions, as well as any of the partner organizations listed here would be happy to answer questions and help companies engage more deeply with the SDG Compass. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. Really, really great. And thanks. It was a good way of going through the 5 phases. So let me see if I can change to the next slide and then welcome Tanya to talk about KPMG and the SDGs.
Great. Thank you so much, Hella. Hello, everyone. Really pleased to be part of today's webinar. I just want to echo what Hella and Emily have been saying about what an incredible opportunity for business the SDGs present, as well as clearly an opportunity for society. If I can get the next slide, please. And what I hope to do over the next few minutes is add to the toolkit that Emily's already started by telling you a little bit about the work that we're doing with the UN Global Compact. We are very proud to collaborate with the Global Compact to develop 7 industry matrices, which is really designed to assist business to translate the Sustainable Development Goals into strategic industry activities that have the potential to grow in both scale and impact. So each matrix provides industry-specific ideas for action, as well as industry-specific practical examples for each of the 17 goals. Really looking to showcase opportunities which companies can expect to create business value as well as social value. Right now, the financial services industry matrix is available, and the link is at the bottom of the slide. And just to give you an overview of how it all breaks down, for each of the 17 goals, the broader business opportunities described, as well as profiles of various companies and their so for example, for the first Sustainable Development Goal, end poverty in all its forms everywhere, the overall opportunities for shared value: innovate to develop new financial products, credit scoring methodologies, operating models, and distribution channels, including mobile banking, to advance financial inclusion, including banking for the 2.5 billion adults currently without a bank account, and microinsurance to increase social protection. And then we go on to give specific examples of what MasterCard, Standard Chartered, Aviva, Scotiabank, and Yes Bank, just to name a few, just to give examples of what they're doing. And the whole idea is, how can we make this, really easy, really think about opportunities for your business. So I mentioned that financial services is available now. The transportation matrix will be published aligned with COP21, so look out for that. The industrial manufacturing matrix, that will be published in January. And then for the remaining matrices, we will be opening up a consultation period over the next few weeks, and we will put out notification through the UN Global Compact channels, where we're really looking for your examples of what your company is doing to potentially be profiled in the report. So healthcare and life sciences, food, beverage, and consumer goods, energy, natural resource and chemicals. As I said, over the next few weeks, we'll be opening up the consultation period, and then early in 2016, those industry matrices will be published as well. If I can have the next slide, please. Just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're doing at KPMG to work towards the Sustainable Development Goals. I think fundamentally what we strive to do is to contribute to all 17 of the goals through the assistance that we provide to our clients. In particular, we have our True Value methodology, which we use to help our clients understand market dynamics that are driving the internalization of business externalities. So really, what we're trying to do is help companies to identify and quantify externalities so that we can help business recognize what is driving and understanding what the implications are for corporate and social value. Let me give you a brief example. So the global corporate cement company Holcim, they were looking to demonstrate the business case for their sustainability program. So they set out to do the quantitative analysis. We worked with them to help them understand and make informed decision-making about what sustainable initiatives that they should be investing in. So through our True Value methodology, our team worked with Holcim to monetize the impact of the company on society and the environment, and then set this off against its financial results. So really helping Holcim's business leaders to understand how to grow economically while being responsible. So that's just a small snapshot. But from a firm perspective, as corporate citizenship programs globally, there's goals 4, 8, and 12. Quality education, good jobs and economic growth, and responsible consumption and production. And really looking at, how we can develop thought leadership, how we can align key partnerships to really drive results in these key areas. May I have the next slide, please? In Canada, we have a strategic partnership with Free the Children, and what we've been doing over the past 5 years is working with them through their Adopt a Village model. And in particular, we've got a focus on helping to drive financial literacy in communities in Kenya, India, and Ecuador. So really, we're looking at how we can, drive achievement of a number of the goals. And I would say that gender equality is a particular focus, as the financial literacy programs are not exclusively for women. All members of the community can participate, but there is a particular focus on how to engage women in improving their financial literacy and then that of their families. So we're quite excited about this. I'm cognizant of time and would really be pleased to have any offline discussions, and my contact information also is on the next slide. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Tanya, and yes, really looking forward to embarking on these new matrix and sharing them with the network, and actually also working together across the value chains in terms of some of these SDG goals. Lots of great opportunities here. And then I think I will see if I can get to the next slide here and ask Jeff if you want to tell us about TELUS and the SDGs.
Great, thanks, Hella. Hi, everyone. First, I just wanted to say thanks to Emily and Tanya both for sharing what they've done today, and it's inspiring. These are this is how we learn. So TELUS as an organization, can learn from the tools and the framework that are provided. You made me think, Tanya, just talking about mobile banking technology and on that, how it aligns potentially with SDG #1 around no poverty, and it made me think about TELUS and some of our technology and the Internet of Things and how we can contribute there. So as we go through our just another thing to think about. So very inspirational, so appreciate that. Before I get going, potentially for those who don't know about TELUS on the call, so we're a telecommunications provider in Canada. We provide a wide range of communications products and services, including wireless, data, internet, protocol, voice, television, entertainment, and video. And we're also Canada's largest healthcare IT provider as well. So perhaps we can go to the next slide. So this is really a slide that I just want to pause and say, we're really looking forward to the partnerships that we have with the Global Compact Canada and some of the info sessions that I know are planned. We partook in the survey that Hella reviewed earlier and shared our thoughts, and of course primary amongst those thoughts was, yeah, we can use all the help we can get when it comes to learning and understanding about the SDGs and how we can integrate into our business strategies and into our operations, and then subsequently into our reporting. Sustainability teams, I know in corporate Canada, even though there's so many organizations that are demonstrating leadership, they're typically very small. And so therefore, when we can include our network and our partners in helping us through the exercise of taking advantage of the opportunities that have been mentioned earlier, it's always appreciated as well. If we can go to the next slide, please. So this is nothing new. It's just sort of maybe as we look through the resources that Emily went through earlier, It's how is it going to work best for us to do this right? And I think you'll see a common theme here is around education. Education as it pertains to let the subject matter experts learn and absorb what the SDGs mean on a global perspective, and then thinking about how they apply to our current operations, initiatives, our strategic planning. And then thinking about the goals that we have. So those could be internal goals to drive performance, but also our publicly reported goals. How do the SDGs align? And then I think critical, again, harking back to the fact that there may be a handful of subject matter experts within your organization. Oftentimes you'll need to bring along others to help you integrate any roadmaps that you embark on, your action plans, having those accountabilities. You need to be able to educate those stakeholders internally and also externally. So what does this mean to your customers or your investors or your suppliers? And I think that's critical piece. So it's a common theme, I think, is that education. We've been thinking about, for example, we've launched an app, a real-time sustainability engagement app for our employees across Canada. And one of the ways in which we can leverage this tool is to provide links and summaries on what even are the SDGs and reach a number of people fairly quickly. But more importantly, it's the strategy. How do we embed this, and how does it align with our strategies, our business strategies, and our sustainability vision? And you can see throughout, I think, communication is critical, not only on the education piece, of course, but then, as Emily talked about, is how do we publicly discuss? How does TELUS going to support and advance the SDGs along with the 10 principles? And how are we going to report on that and align it to our GRI goals as well? If we could move to the next slide, please. So this slide is a little bit ugly, and there's two reasons for that. One is because I did it myself, and it's not my strong forte, but really more importantly, I wanted to demonstrate the fact that as we go through, look at some of the initiatives that we have, and we try and map, as Tanya reviewed with some of the initiatives that KPMG has with, for example, Free the Children. We are looking at some of our initiatives and how do they align. And once we can understand that, then we can think about, okay, how do they become an impetus or a driver in advancing the strategy in and of itself? So we can just pick on one example here. We give where we live is sort of our tagline, if you will, around our community investment strategy. And as you can imagine, that we have a community strategy that's built on focusing on youth and education and technology. So if we look at the SDGs, again, can we drive some strategy around ending hunger, for example, or equitable quality education? Is that a driver for us in terms of creating our strategy and then our action plans and the accountabilities that go along with that? And I'll just say that, since the SDGs were launched in September, it's actually a short time ago. We're at the beginning stages. It really is going to be a journey for us. I think that, if you look at the framework that Emily went through, it's fantastic, and there's a lot of tools that can help an organization think about the process that they might undertake. In between that is really all the hard work and the time and the effort that's required, and we're okay. We're okay if it takes time and take that approach moving forward. I think that education is going to be critical, and we're wanting to do it right the first time. We can move on to the next slide, please. So how can our business be creative and innovative when it comes to, again, advancing the SDGs? And I think we need to make sure that we're leveraging our core business and the technology that we have. That's something as an organization, I think can provide a lot of tools and solutions to potentially to advancing the SDGs. As I mentioned, TELUS in Canada is Canada's largest IT health provider, so that can be providing access to healthcare in remote communities, for example, using electronic medical records and the like. I also think that, which was mentioned throughout the framework that Emily went through, is really taking advantage of those industry associations that you might have and the partnerships like TELUS has with the Global Compact Network Canada on how we can come up with ideas to advance the SDGs. I think it's critical as well that we build capacity with our stakeholders, such as our customers and suppliers, listening to what is important to them and their views on the impacts that we have on the SDGs and how they believe that we can best serve is critical as well. And I would agree with also with the setting transformative targets. I think that it was mentioned that you could set different levels depending on what you wanted to do. And I think if you're going to go through this exercise and make sure that these SDGs are something that aligns with the environmental or social purpose of your organization, it's good to set transformative targets as well. And I think that's something that takes time to figure out what that is and how you can best employ that within your organization, but it's worth doing. So just in summary, it is a journey, and we want to make sure that when we do this, we do it right the first time, and it's something that's going to take time for us to do here at TELUS, but we are committed, just like we are committed to advancing the 10 principles of the Global Compact to do this right. And we want to make sure that as we step forward that everything that we're doing is aligning to our corporate strategy and our sustainability vision. And of course, we will have our ears and eyes wide open on how we can listen and learn from those willing and able to help. Again, my contact information can be shared. I'll be glad to chat with any of you offline. And appreciate the time and the opportunity to share the beginning of TELUS's journey here today.
Thank you so much, Jeff. As always, it's great to hear the way that you start things and start this journey. And as you say, this is a journey. And I think everybody's on the same first steps of that journey, and hoping that we can have peer learning sessions, etc. on this. I will change to the next slide in terms of the Q&A session. And I can see I'm already getting questions in here, so I'll not even start on my own. Emily, I think the first question is actually for you, and it's a very practical question. Can we expect translations of the SDG guide, I guess it's SDG Compass, into other languages in the near future? I don't know if you have any knowledge about that.
My understanding is that that will be happening, but I don't think it's not available yet in other languages. But we have gotten that request from various people, so I just stay tuned on the website, and when it's available, it'll be posted there.
Super, thanks. And the next question, I believe, Jeff, that might be for you. It says, as a Canadian publicly listed company, how did TELUS shareholders support the integration of SDGs with business practices? I don't know if you even talked to the shareholders yet.
Yeah, to be honest with you, we do have regular sessions with institutional shareholders, ethical investors, etc. So that's the most common way that the sustainability team would directly be in contact with that particular stakeholder group. I haven't had one of those since September, to be frank with you. But it's something that we will gladly do. It's similar to how we would talk about how we are a member and a signatory to the Global Compact 10 Principles. We do have a pretty strong governance process in place, and we do report to our board of directors quarterly. And I think it would be prudent for us to include in our report, is probably the timing is right in our next reporting to the board, is to say education for the board in terms of here are the SDGs, as I spoke about. That's very critical, and we can even provide some of our preliminary work on how our current initiatives, programs are aligned to the SDGs. And so yeah, it's just an ongoing dialogue. We regularly engage in communication with our stakeholders, investors, customers, team members, governments, etc., communities. So we would keep it part of that as part of our governance process, external advisory panels that we participate in. So that would be another way in which we would engage. But we haven't done it to date. Great question, though.
Indeed.
And or suggestion.
Exactly. I was talking to some board of directors the other day and said, well, there's so many goals, and how do we align them with the business, etc. So I hear you. I think it's not only education, it's education almost for both on the board and for the investors and others. This is a lot of great things to happen in this area.
So the way that Tanya described it in her presentation on KPMG, for example, on their community programs and which SDGs that they align to, is a great way to integrate. And I think it could help with the potential of overwhelming people with all sort of 17 at once, so that you can see, okay, here's our initiative and here's where we see the alignment. And that's a good way to help educate people in my view. So I like that.
Yeah, I agree, and that's also how you actually get it into the strategy of the business in that regard. I know, Tanya, do you want to comment on that one?
Well, first off, thank you. I really appreciate the comment, and really take the point about simplicity, and that is one of the things that we've really strived to achieve here. Is how do we break down something that is inherently complex and really try to demonstrate, first and foremost, that there are already things that we are doing that align to some of the goals and help to push things forward. And then once we've got that understanding, then, how is it that we can be even more aggressive, be even more persuasive in the things that we're doing to drive even greater impact and to inspire, some broader thinking, and not just from a firm perspective, but, for our people in their individual actions, or thinking about opportunities with clients in very different ways. Trying to stay true to simplicity is something that we work very hard to do.
Super. And Tanya, I'm actually not sure if the next question here is for you as well. It's about skill-based volunteering, and say we can give an overview of the Impact 2030 initiative, where companies commit to align their skill-based volunteering efforts in support of the SDGs. I don't know if that is something you're involved in.
Well, I'm happy to chat about some of the things that we're doing here. I mean, fundamentally at KPMG, as part of our business strategy, community engagement, driving social change, in the communities that we operate in across Canada, and there's about 40 of them, that's fundamentally a core part of who we are. And to that extent, we as part of their role, support all of our people to engage, leveraging their expertise in things that they are particularly passionate about. And that has resulted in incredible change since we launched the strategy in 2009. And, we are striving to think about, how is it that we can provide, our people with more support and more direction. And I think the Sustainable Development Goals provide an excellent opportunity for that, when people can see how what they're doing is not only contributing to the organizations and the people that they're working with, but more broadly to objectives that the people around the world are pulling towards. It's pretty powerful to feel part of something much bigger than yourself.
I had muted myself. Yeah, and I think that is actually one of the points here, also to connect with both within the industry and the industry matrix, but actually also connect via value chain. So as Emily was talking about, looking at the value chain and how also to have partnerships in the value chain. I loved your comment, Jeff, in terms of like what Tanya was saying, that also inspired you in that regard. So I think there's a lot of good things there. I see I just got another question in here, and then I guess that have to be almost the last question. This question is how to measure the efforts made in relation to public-private partnerships in associations, since the impact is much greater than working alone as a company. Oh, that might be actually what I was just talking about. And I guess it's a question about how to actually measure the impact of PPPs, of public-private partnerships. I have a lot of examples of that from my previous life, but I don't know, Jeff, is that something you want to talk about in what you're doing, or Tanya?
Yeah, I mean, measurement on those types of things is always critical, and always not easy to do. That happens. I can think of in terms of trying to reduce some of the environmental footprint, for example, where we partner with an organization like Green Standards, and as we are reducing and right-sizing our real estate footprint, is how we can partner with them to repurpose, recycle some of the furniture, for example, when we're trying to exit space. And critical to that partnership was setting out some measurement standards on what's happening, where is it going, where's the product going, and what's the value, and what is the benefits for our Scope 3 reporting for our GHGs. So I think it's just, you have to take the time and set out what you're intending to measure, looking at the data that's available, and setting out a framework there. And I know that's easy to say. It's probably easier to say than it is to do, and that's just the reality of it. So, but I think it's critical, especially from a stakeholder perspective, because it's one thing to say, what you're doing, but people are more interested in the impacts, sort of the so what of what you're doing. So I think organizations need to think that way in terms of measuring those impacts and sometimes the outcomes from the PPPs.
Indeed, you're right. Tanya, do you want to just a word on that?
Well, just continuing on from what Jeff said, I think it's having real clarity at the outset of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and then thinking through, what are the indicators that we will look to as we're progressing through our project plan, through our timeline, to let us know how we're doing. And then ultimately, getting that clarity up front as to, how are we going to measure the ultimate outcome that we're driving towards, and where does the accountability for measurement sit, and data collection sit. But I think having those progress indicators, those milestones, are really important, because some of the change that public-private partnerships are driving towards, it's pretty enormous. And you're not going to be able to get a sense of that until much later out. But having some indicators to let you know how you're doing Do we need to modify our approach? Do we need to be doing things differently? Absolutely critical to achieving that intended outcome at the end of the day.
Indeed. And I think we have, in terms of the SDGs and Sustainable Development Goals, can go hand in hand with many of the strategies, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for PPP, public-private partnerships, in that as well. I'm told that we are up to the hour now, and we shift our or not our calendar, but we shift the slide so you can just get an overview of the different activities in December. And I guess then for the new year will come later on. We shared a little bit of that on our last quarterly call. So I guess with that, I will say thank you so much, Emily. Great presentation and for taking us through the SDG Compass. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you all for taking part of the webinar today and for all your great questions. I already got a thank you here in the question section. So thank you all. Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.